Good afternoon. We are going to go ahead and get started with today's presentation. Thank you to all of our staff attending here in the office today and to all of you joining us via Google Hangouts. We will have a little time at the end for questions, and if you're watching this online, you'll be able to send us questions through Hangouts as long as you're logged in through a Google account. We will also take questions during the presentation if anyone has something they would like to ask. With that said, welcome everyone. Interexchange is very excited to be celebrating World Oceans Day today and to kick off a summer-long series of events as part of the Department of State's Our Ocean campaign. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has identified protecting the oceans as a key foreign policy priority. And this summer, the U.S. Department of State has launched an Our Ocean Roadshow, which will run from today, World Oceans Day, through September 16th, which is the conclusion of Secretary Kerry's Our Ocean Conference in Washington, D.C. Interexchange is committed to promoting environmental stewardship, and we have joined the Our Ocean campaign with a series of events for our participants and hosts in various locations across the United States. These include beach cleanups, lectures, and volunteering opportunities, and the complete list of these events can be accessed at interexchange.org/our-ocean. Today, we are very happy to welcome to our office Louis Kleinman, the community liaison from the Waterfront Alliance, which works to protect, transform, and revitalize New York's harbor and waterfront, and which advocates for a healthy, vibrant waterfront that is accessible to all. Louis helps to manage the Waterfront Alliance's portfolio of more than 935 Alliance partners and regularly gets out in the community to recruit new partners and spread the Waterfront Alliance gospel. In addition, Louis oversees the online waterfront events calendar, and as an environmental activist, he also volunteers his time with several nonprofit organizations. Please join me in welcoming Louis here today.
Thank you. And I'll start with the usual thank yous to everybody. Thank you to the organization and everybody for inviting us into this. It's really fantastic to be able to do a presentation, which I understand is being circulated around the universe by way of the internet, so that's great. We have a waterfront presentation by way of PowerPoint, and as it was said, stop at any time and ask me whatever questions, because I just don't want to keep talking forever reading off a screen. So you want to begin the... So this is New York City by the numbers, essentially. I did not compose this list. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's exactly accurate, but what the heck, pretty close. And who's counting anyway? This is what the importance of New York City and what we do in the city in terms of the amount of activity that we have on our waterfronts. And it is an indication exactly of not only the number of people who participate, but it's an indication of the billions of dollars of jobs that the waterfront generates. So in terms of what is important to New York City and to the people who live in New York City, it's the waterfront and its harbors and rivers to be used for both educational, recreational, environmental, and also the working harbor itself. And all of these things combine to produce what we hope for to be a viable and an exciting place to live and to work. So, and I had not seen this PowerPoint before, so it says very brief, and hopefully that is going to be so. Let's take a look. Okay, 1651, that's kind of old. Moving up in 200 year segments. So, oh, by the way, if you just take a look at that map, you will see something that is important to New York City, which is that as you move forward in the years, all of those edges are going to be filled in with various materials so that the actual territory of Manhattan and New York City keeps continuously being expanded. 1856, you see all the sailings and all the boats and whatever going. And there it is in 1896, and it has it developed in 1901. Okay, let's stop right there. When you see old pictures of the waterfront in New York City, and it's many sailing ships with cargoes and whatever, and it looks to you as though the whole area is just vibrant with shipping activity as compared to what you see when you go and look out the window currently. You see a few ships going by, etc. Keep in mind that we're in the era of containerization. All of those sailing ships put together will not make one cargo container ship for materials. So that when you have maybe 1,000 sailing ships together, perhaps you might be able to fill up the capacity of one of the smaller container ships, forget the new ones. So the post-industrial waterfront, for a long time, we did not care about what was happening. We retreated from the use of the waterfront. We used the waterfronts for all kinds of things, from staging of cars to dumps to whatever we could find use, because we just didn't realize the importance and the essential goodness of being a waterfront city. And as you can see, we've got a waterfront at that time with absolutely no access and a lot of garbage floating around. Now, before you get into this part of it, that I am old enough, which is probably twice the age of everybody in this room, to remember when you did not want to be caught 150 or 250 yards of the waterfront, of the waters around the city, because they smelled so bad and they were so contaminated. So we go from Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, if you guys remember what that is about, to the Waterfront Act, to the Clean Waters Act, to what we have today, which was an impetus to clean up our waters and our shorelines. And by doing so, all of a sudden, there was a paradigm shift in people's imaginations of what our rivers and our waters and our harbors could be used for. So here we've got a simple waterfront, which is called by that Spanish name. I won't even try to pronounce it. Let's see what's next. And how far can we go? I don't know. From this to that. Now, that's the old way of looking at a waterfront edge. Today, we try to make it a soft edge to absorb storms and to absorb the high seas that those storms will produce with climate change. So those hard edge bulkheads, which essentially is fighting nature, because what happens is that those waters will hit those bulkheads and then move back out. And if it's too tall for the bulkheads, the water comes over the top of them. And what happens then is that you've got essentially a bathtub effect. If you have a soft edge composed of rocks and other kinds of materials to help absorb that area, to help absorb the water that is being pushed out, you'll get much less overflow onto the land. And this is an idea of what is going on. The birth of Waterfront Alliance, which is working with groups, organizations, all kinds of different people, both commercial and not-for-profits, to make use of the water and its waterways and our waterfront areas for the benefit of us all. You have kayaking there under the Brooklyn Bridge, which is over on the East River. You have, looks to me like seining on the left side, or water shorefront cleanup. And then you have a group of guys who are doing whatever they're doing to have a lot of fun onto the water. Before we get into the historic and educational ships, I will tell you, if you don't, probably you don't know, because unless you're really into it, you're not going to realize it. There are at least 14 different not-for-profit boat clubs around the 5 boroughs and over in New Jersey. By not-for-profit boat clubs, I'm saying that you could go and walk up to one of these community boathouses whenever they're open, which is usually during Saturdays and Sundays, but some of them work on the evenings during the weekend, during the weekday, I'm sorry. And you'll sign a waiver. and you can get into a kayak or a canoe or some other similar on-water activity and go out with your family, your friends, even your dog quite often, and paddle around in East River, the Hudson River, the Long Island Sound. It's absolutely amazing. I think we are about the only town in the universe that has that much of an ability to put people out onto the water in a recreational and educational and environmental knowledge capacity. Last year, my understanding was that there were about 25,000 people actually got into the water for free. Now, that doesn't even count the commercial groups that are around. You can rent kayaks, you can rent rowboats, you can rent sail boats. They will teach you whatever, and that's a whole additional adjunct to what's available to you. So all of this activity, I hope, gives you an invitation to check out what's possible if you're doing nothing on a weekend. Maybe you'd like to go out and look, and if you contact us or me at the Waterfront Alliance, we can give you the names of various boat clubs that are available in your town, in your where you live. Historic and educational ships, which is a picture of an historic and educational ship. That's nice. Oh, I see. So these are the things, some of the things that we try to promote, which is historic and educational ships, the working waterfront, and a living resilient edge, as I said before, which is basically a soft edge to help absorb the seas and the impact of the water on our shores. Next. We promote ferries, and we've got a whole program to help work with the city in their new ferry program. We're going to have 7 different new ferry routes coming online in the next 3 years, all of which hopefully will reduce the requirements for mass transit as people get into the ferries. Maybe we'll be able to reduce the number of cars. It's a start. It's certainly not the end all of everything in terms of developing an environmental consciousness for the motorists, but it is a start. Next. And there's our mission, which you were good enough to give to us, and we can move on. And these are just a list of some of the groups to give you an indication. They range, as I said, from commercial to not-for-profits to informal organizations. Next. And these are the agendas and the policies that we try to promote, that people who do sign up to what we call a Waterfront Alliance partnership. We don't charge for this. People just subscribe to our mission. And when they subscribe, it means that they support what we do. And as I said, I think that we have over 935 different organizations and groups that have in fact registered with us. So it's a comprehensive program, and there's a kayaker right there in front of it. That's okay, you don't have to go back. There's a kayaker there in front of a working gantry. Gantry is something that's used to do whatever for cargoes. And there are our various programs. We establish a waterfront policy, and we try to get our city officials to go along with our waterfront policy, some of which, of course, they'll accept, some of which they don't, but we keep working at it. Our ferry transit program, the Open Waters Initiative, which means that we are trying to get more docks and more ability for the historic ships and the other types of vessels to have an ability to arrive in New York City as opposed to not coming to New York City. A harbor camp, which is a program that we have for kids, that we go and talk to the neighborhood houses, and they produce children who go out on boats, such as Pioneer, which is a ship at the
South Street
Seaport Museum, I'm sorry, at the South Street Seaport Museum, and various other ships. And these kids get onto the water, and supposedly they have a good time. I'm sure they do. And the Waterfront Edge Design program that we have, which is called WED, the acronym. Don't you love acronyms? You can't live without them. Which is basically a kind of a LEED program, if you know what that is, which is a resilient type of a program from building onto near the waterfront and on the waterfront to make new buildings as sustainable as possible. Our City of Water Day, which is an event that's free for the public. City of Water Day is we sponsor on the two major venues of Governor's Island and over at Hoboken. We'll get 25,000 people at Governor's, which sounds like a lot, but you'd be surprised. Governor's is a big place in New York Harbor, and you won't even know that they're there. Hoboken will get another 10,000 people. We'll get free ferries going between Governor's Island and Hoboken, which is the only time that happens. We'll get 200 or 300 kayakers that come up in various waves, and they get to camp out on Governor's Island during that evening, which never happens. On the island itself, we have something we call the cardboard kayak race. We provide the materials. We give people 2 hours to build their own cardboard kayaks. They get into the water with them, and they race from point A to point B, literally sink or swim. Which is fine. Everybody has a good time. 5,000 people look, and if you go into YouTube and look for City of Water Day Cardboard Kayak Race, you're going to see some difference. And then we sponsor our Waterfront Conference, which is a day-long talk with panels and all kinds of activities as to what people would like to see related to the waterfront and its harbors and its rivers. One of the other points of these conferences, which you all know because you're working here, I'm sure, is not just the fact that you learn something, but it's the meet and greet, the people that you don't normally get a chance to see in the course of a year or whatever. You meet various important people who are instrumental in developing the waterfront, and that's how you can get a lot of connections going. And this is our agenda. The Green Harbor is self-explanatory, I suppose. That's the environmental portion. The waterfront town, which is what I've been talking about, the well-designed edge, the working waterfront, and the blue highways, which is basically mass transit on the water. So blue movement plus action agenda plus legislation will equal New York City Comprehensive Waterfront Plan, and we hope to be instrumental in developing that waterfront plan for the city. And again, it's for the benefit of the finances, but more importantly, the people who live in the cities. And there are the various goals. I don't have to read them to you. You can see them for yourself. This is a good moment to just take a small break here. Does anybody have any questions about what we're talking about so far? Go.
Could you talk a little bit, like what is the quality of the water in the harbor these days?
The deal is that, as I said, you don't want to be within 1,000 miles of that water. We're so bad. Over the course of years, it's been improving constantly to the point where on the water now you have swim events, and I'm not talking about the beaches. I'm talking about people who do Olympic swimming, say from here to Coney Island, which is a good distance, maybe 6 hours, 7 hours worth of swimming. People who do swim events in the harbor, on the East River, the Hudson River, the Harlem River. You don't want to get into the water, as far as I'm concerned, a day or two after it rains, because that's when all of the garbage just spills right back into the water. And I'll tell you about CSOs in a little bit of time, because that's related to the the combined sewer outflow problem. But the water itself is essentially really great to use, and people use it. There are city advisories that they put out, particularly in beaches, and there's a big difference between those of us who don't swim, who are in kayaks and rowboats, etc., as opposed to actually swimming. So the city advisories are generally for the beaches itself, where people just get into the water from Coney or wherever. The advisories are also given when there's a what they call a CSO event. Well, it's gotten to the point where every time it rains, they put out a city advisory. What are you going to do? As I say, 2 days after the rain, it's fine. The one thing you don't want to eat in the harbor, in the rivers, in the water, are the fish. The water is clean enough to swim in, but it's the sediments at the bottom that still are not clean. So the fish, from small fish up to big fish, and you don't know what you're eating because you're eating all that garbage that's been floating in the sediments. And when we're talking about cleaning our waterfront and our waters, we're talking about basically making it suitable for swimming, although the Clean Water Act says suitable for swimming and fishing. It's going to be a lot easier to do the swimming portion of it than it will be for the fishing part, because the fishing part is going to take billions of dollars, in fact, to really improve. But that should stop nobody from getting into the water. Don't I answer you?
Yeah, perfect.
How does the water get cleaned? What is sort of the process? I mean, when somebody decided they wanted it to be clean,
It's the moon.
the moon?
It's the moon.
Tides.
The tides.
Okay.
Tides go in and out twice a day. So that's 4 times clean, up and back. You got the whole ocean out there. The tides come in, the water gets clean, it comes back out again. Plus the fact that we're trying to handle runoffs in an appropriate manner so that there's less and less runoffs that get into the water. But essentially, we're blessed because of the tides. And since it's now become against the law for dump stuff automatically into the water, those tides now have a chance to work, which is why when you have certain areas such as the Gowanus Canal or Newtown Creek, which is in Brooklyn and in Queens, they don't have a chance to clean up very often or as well because they're secluded inland water areas. So those areas require special cleanups in order to make them as viable as our rivers and our streams.
But generally, it's not about special cleanups. It's more about less pollution and then
It's
allowing a
matter
natural cleaning.
of- It's a matter of everything essentially for cleaning. Right now, the way it works is perfectly acceptable to get into the water and use it after, like, as I say, 2 days after a rain. But everything else should also be done in order to make it even better. So right now, we've got minimal ability, which is perfectly healthy, but we would like to see a great deal better use of it.
There's also a project called the Billion Oyster Project that the Harbor School is working with, and they're basically planting oyster beds throughout New York City because oysters can actually filter incredible amounts of water. So that's a huge project that is happening here in New York Harbor that they're doing to help try to clean the water.
And as an example, when the Lenape were here, those are the Native Americans who occupied our shores. They feasted on oysters. New York City was known for its oysters back in the 18th, early 19th century. The most delicious oysters in the world. They were equivalent to billions of dollars in our dollars for the trade of oysters. Oysters are very, very susceptible for pollution. They clean the water, they do whatever, they filter it, which means that the oysters themselves will become dirty and you don't want to eat them. And that's what happened to the oysters. And that's what we're now trying to bring back. And oysters are like one of these species that are as a canary in the coal mine. If the oysters are growing well, it means that the waters themselves are doing well. If the oysters are not, then the waters are not.
Yeah, along with the pollution or the water quality, is there any concern with, I don't know, using it more for transportation, the water taxis, the tourist boats? Are those kind of counteracting the water cleanup, or is it insignificant?
It is really an insignificant part. And as the ferries themselves acquire motors that are much more environmentally clean, and that happens on a regular basis, science is really doing very well. Knowledge is improving to that extent. There's less and less pollution that these ferries and taxis will do. But there is a certain amount of trade-off, of course. I mean, they cannot dump once upon a time, you're on a boat, you flush your toilet, you go right into the water. I mean, but you can't do that anymore, thank God. But the engines in themselves are emitters, of course, and that's air quality and not water quality that we're talking about. but it's becoming very, very much better. And as we go on moving into the 21st century, I'm sure it's going to get substantially improved. And then as a credit, you got to figure the amount of automobiles, which are highly polluting, that will be taken off our roads. Oh, so here's our ferry transit program, which you can read. I don't have to read that for you. The thing about the ferry transit program that people sometimes overlook is that last item on there. It is good to have the ability to bring in ferries, God forbid, of another major emergency, and emergencies will happen. There are certain areas in the city, out in Red Hook or over at Rockaways, that people cannot easily get out of an area to evacuate, and that's what a ferry can be good for. So a ferry is great. The ferry transit program is fantastic, and it will be a great improvement on the uses of our waterways, but also in the back of everybody's mind is the fact that we're going to have these ferries available for emergency purposes. Yes?
Can you confirm that in these 7 new ferry routes, there is going to be a route to the Rockaways?
Yes, there is a route to the Rockaways, absolutely. It was on, isn't there a map up there?
Yeah, this is the map here.
But it cuts it off.
It only shows the latter part, it doesn't show, yes, there is a route to the Rockaways. Absolutely. The whole problem with areas like the Rockaways, and there's another route up to Southview Park up in the Bronx, another route is to make sure that you've got the people who will be on that ferry to make it not fully self-supporting, but at least take care of some of that economic burden. Nothing can be ever fully self-supported, but nevertheless, if it's underused, if people aren't going to use it, these routes I think are in for 4 or 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. After 5 years, the city will take another look at this thing. So you'll have a new mayor, you're going to have a new city council, you're going to have people who say, why should we put money into this program when we need new whatever? And if we would like to see that these things are used by people. And that's also a function of how much it's going to cost and the connections of the ferry routes to the inland part of it. So that if you're coming down on a ferry and you wind up on 34th Street on East River and you need to get to work in Midtown, it doesn't do you too much good to get that fast ferry route and then wait around for an hour for a bus to come through. And this is the Open Waters Initiative, one of which is our Bay Ridge Eco Dock. As you can see, it was launched. It's currently undergoing repairs, but one day it'll get back into business again. And that's self-apparent. Eco docks, that's an interesting term, right? Does anybody know what an eco dock is? I don't quite understand it, but it's a good PR term. Oh, I think all docks are eco, since they don't run on electricity, but nevertheless. Everybody loves the name, so that's great. There's the harbor camp. That's an old slide. We are no longer MWA. We are now Waterfront Alliance. So take that for what it is, but nevertheless, it's still true. What you're seeing there is still true.
Why was it not a surprise to you
If you
guys?
go back and look at the NOAA, National
Oceanic and
Atmospheric
Administration.
and other, from the feds, various studies, they all predicted that we were due for this kind of an event happening within 10, 15 years. But like everything else, it's out of sight, out of mind. It would take a lot of money, and people are not impelled to do anything until all of a sudden they're swimming around on their streets. So it's not a surprise, but it came as a shock. And this is our wedge program. And this is just the various tools and things that the wedge program uses. And that's last year's City of Water Day. And I have flyers I gave out to everybody for this year's City of Water Day. I hope some of you might participate and give out. And if you want to volunteer and help us out, we can use all the hands that we can get. And this is our waterfront conference. The waterfront conference is on a boat. We can put it anywhere, but it's on a boat. Since we are the Waterfront Alliance, it's nice to have it on a boat. It's a little distracting. A lot of people like to look and get on the deck and watch the harbor go by, and they avoid the various talking heads. But what are you going to do? But it's good. And then you have this post Superstorm Sandy, and you have the water quality. All of these are various kinds of initiatives and issues that we try to become involved with.
Can you talk a little bit more about the rules of the road? I was wondering about that with more people, more ferries, and more people recreationally
All
on
right.
kayaks. How do they all?
As a kayaker, I have the right of way over everything.
But you're much smaller.
However, I mean, you're going to tell you that 20-ton oil truck barreling down on you that you just don't have the right of way. Don't get out of it. Please stop. It's not going to happen. So the rules of the road are what is promulgated by the Coast Guard, which you have to follow in terms of what's left, what's right, what kind of running lights you're supposed to have, who goes first, who doesn't go first. And there's kind of a hierarchy that starts with human-powered boaters and works its way up to sailing ships, up to smaller craft motor ships, up to the very large vessels. All of which are supposed to tell you what to do. One of the big contentions that we always have in terms of the ferries is that a rule is that a ferry, when it backs out, is supposed to honk their horns 3 times as warning. Unfortunately, we live in a very politicized world. New York City, of course, it is. And a lot of people start complaining when they hear ferries honking outside their back windows, and they complain. And some of the ferries stop honking, and some of them still continue. And what are you going to do? The post-Panamax shipping, you all understand about that. The Bayonne Bridge had to go up a couple of 100 feet to accommodate, and then there was dredging down to 50 feet to widen the shipping channel so that we can still stay in business and be competitive with all the rest of the various cities on the eastern seaboard. And this is the part of the permitting. There's the dredging, and there's some of the governance features, the different organizations that we try to work with in order to promote the benefits that we are looking for. And I welcome your further thoughts, because there we are.
Great.
It's quiet.
That Panamax work, has that been finished?
Panamax is coming online, I think, in July, August.
Not sure of the date.
Sometime this year. And we're going to see these very, very big super tankers that are capable of putting together 2 of those smaller containers for people. And as I said, people get nostalgic when they talk about the busyness of the harbor, when they look at those old sailing ship pictures. You put them all together and they won't fit into one of these containers. So the amount of cargo in the volume is much bigger than it ever used to be. Help me out.
You mentioned earlier that you were going to talk about the sewage system.
Okay, fine. New York City, like all of the older cities in North America, have what they call a combined sewer outflow. When your sewerage goes down, any kind of sewage goes down, it goes into a water treatment plant. And by the way, those water treatment plants are relatively new. They treat the water, make it clean, and discharge whatever's left out into the rivers. And the balance then gets sent out to some other, God forbid, where, Texas, I think, maybe, hopefully. But in any event,
They dump it in the ocean.
it does whatever it does. No, they don't dump it in the ocean.
I see them go by me all the time.
Yeah, but they don't dump it in the ocean. They put it together and send it out.
Taking it someplace else.
But when there's a big rain event,
somewhere else.
the sewage system can't handle the rainfall. And what that happens is that when the sewage system can't handle the rainfall that goes into the water treatment plants, it then flows directly into the water directly. And that's why you don't go into the water 2 or 3 days after a rain, 1 or 2 days after, whatever. They're working on the problem in terms of putting in collection tanks for the overflows so that the water would be held after a rain event, and then it would then be sent forward into the water treatment plants. Your question should be, why don't we improve the CSOs, the combined sewer outflows? Money. Billions and billions of dollars to change our sewage system. And that's only just one part of it. That's about maybe 3/4 of the problem of the outflow, maybe half of the problem. There's a thing called the MS4s, which is water outflows that don't go through the water treatment plants. They're just collection pipes for outflows that are all around in all of the various waters and rivers. And those are trying to be taken care of. And the city has what they call a long-term control plan to try to work with those pipes and also to improve the ability. They've got some sort of a registry now for all of those pipes. I think it's like 1,000 of them or some such like that around the 5 miles. And it's going to take a little bit of time. The other part of the problem, of course, is the outflow, the downflows from our roads and the highways and whatever, all the cars, all the oil products, everything that flows off into the rivers, and they have to also be collected in some way. And the city's trying to work with that in terms of establishing bioswales, which are green areas where water can be funneled into and then filtered out by way of natural processes.
Do you have any information about what's happening with the cleanup of the Gowanus Canal?
Yes. The Gowanus Canal and also the Newtown Creek, they're both what they call Superfund sites. Mm-hmm. I worked with both of those groups in terms of there's a community advisory group called the CAG, which is required by law, where we give advice and information to the community and also to the EPA, who's required to clean up the waters. There was an application process that was required to become a Superfund site. It means that the water and the sediments will be dredged and cleaned insofar as possible. At a certain point, it doesn't become economically viable. So what they'll do is dredge it down to a certain level and then cap it over with a hard cap that supposedly will last a long time. But the nice thing about the Superfund is that they will be testing it forever. So if there's a problem with it, if there's a hole in the cap or whatever, they will find it and test it, and then they'll come back and redo it. That's on the Gowanus Canal, and that's on the Newtown Creek. There are other Superfund sites. The big one, of course, is upstate on the Hudson River, which is out of Troy and in the Albany area, where all kinds of PCBs were put in, and they've been working on that for a while. The law says that the companies who put that material in and polluted the area of the river are responsible for the costs, but not just the companies, but anybody who went and took over those properties, whether they're the same company with a new name or whether it's entirely different corporation who bought it out. They are responsible for the costs. So they try to get together all these various organizations, all these commercial activities, and then they try to divide up the costs.
Do you collaborate with any other states like New Jersey or anything like that on your water initiative?
With the local towns. Now remember, New York City is New York City. I mean, we are not balkanized except insofar as the 5 boroughs are concerned. Go over to New Jersey, you've got 1 million towns on the waterfront. So we work with all of the various different towns, and we also work a little bit with the state of New Jersey, but not a lot. But we're working toward that sort of a thing. It's easier in terms of the fact that you don't deal with as many different governmental organizations here in New York City as you have to deal with over in New Jersey. And there are other groups. Remember, we're not, we are facilitators. We try to put things together, or we try to work for the benefit of everybody. There are various other non-profit organizations that are very, very active in this. And that's where, and I said there was a paradigm shift in people's thinking. All kinds of different organizations have gotten into the idea that we should be having clean water and a viable waterfront. You have Pete Seeger with the clear water going upstate and doing his thing. You have Riverkeeper, and the Riverkeeper consists of 4 or 5 different, just in this area alone, related organizations that will look at their particular areas. We've got the Riverkeeper, we've got Bay Riverkeeper, you've got all kinds of different groups that are testing the water and then putting out that information of water testing so people can see what they are. If anybody is interested in a good website where you can find where information is about our waterfront, you can go into the New York City Water Trails, which is a nonprofit organization, not to be confused with the New York City watertrail.gov, which is a government organization which lists the various permitted places where you can bring a human-powered boat in and out. But it's New York City watertrails.org, and they post all kinds of information for you. You go into the Riverkeeper water site, and you can get more information. There's a lot of places you can look to see what the quality and whatever of our waterfront. How come nobody's asking me about climate change?
I was going to ask, so if it's not great to eat the fish that come out of the river, what kind of efforts are done to educate people about? I mean, I ride my bike along the river all the time. I see people fishing, clearly with buckets, clearly going to eat the fish. So what's being done to educate those people or put up warning signs?
And what's even worse is not only are they going to eat it, they're going to sell it.
Where?
Which means really buying your sushi, just for starters, you really don't want to buy it from anything but a reputable restaurant, because New York City has a program. Every restaurant gets visited, DNA is sampled, the fish is sampled, they know where that fish comes from. Get your local guys from the carts or whatever like that, and you don't know what's happening. In terms of education, it's both a cultural and an economic thing for quite a few people. If you don't have enough money to buy bread and the water is there, you're going to go fish and bring it home to your family, even if you're not selling. It's very difficult to tell somebody who doesn't have enough money to put food on his table that you shouldn't be eating that fish, but we try. The best way is to work with children. Harbor Camp, what we do is for the environmental programs and the paddling programs, the empowered programs, we get kids who come in and they clean up the waterfront, they work on boats and kayaks and things like that, and we really strongly feel that when you're working with children and give them information, they keep them in mind constantly, and they become environmentalists as they grow up, and they will tell their parents. A lot of us, we have somebody on our staff who's an educator, who will go out to the schools and talk to the lower grades about what is important and what it means to be a waterfront educator and what people should be doing to keep the waterfront clean. And that's all part of the process of what we're trying to do, to educate and keep people responsible. But basically, I really think it's a matter of working with children. That's our hope.
And following up on your, what is happening to the water related to climate change?
So on the climate change part, if you read the materials, it's like a moving target every year almost, right? Right now they're talking about 4 feet rise over the next 50 years. With that and the warmer climate itself, which means that the ocean waters will also be warmer, which means then the oceans will rise even faster because warm water expands. Not to mention the fact that we have a sinking seaboard geologically on the East Coast, but that's not going to happen in 50 years. But nevertheless, it does. There's a little bit of change. All of which will produce more heavier weather, it will produce higher seas, and it will produce more flooding. And we are trying to work our way through what is required to keep our people safe. All kinds of different processes. People say that we should be looking at Holland for an example, but the only trouble with looking at Holland is that they are not the same as us. They're not a harbor, basically. They're in the middle of the ocean. They got a different set of problems. We can get some ideas with them, but nevertheless, not a lot of ideas. I didn't mean not a lot of ideas, but that doesn't mean that all of their ideas are going to be exactly equivalent to what we need to do over here. So do we put in big walls, put in big dikes, and how long will that last? And pretty soon you're going to be looking at an 8-foot wall. Is there a way to maybe mitigate that wave action by doing the soft edges and having water absorb, increase the use of marshes that also absorbs water? All that kind of thing has to be looked at, making our buildings more. I mean, you got billions and billions of dollars of investment here. You're not going to move downtown Manhattan out of harm's way. What you've got to do is have to waterproof the buildings. Maybe you move all your equipment from the ground floor or the basement up to the second floor, the roofs, things of that nature.
Only here 15 years, don't worry.
It's already been done here.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
What else?
Are there any specific projects already sort of underway for addressing climate change in the city?
HUD has a Rebuild by Design, which is a project for improving the new construction that goes on. Buildings, houses are supposed to be elevated to a certain level within the flood zone. That the FEMA, federal insurance people, FEMA, I forget what the acronym stands for, have to develop. Unfortunately, those flood maps are probably as outdated the instant they come out as anything else. But nevertheless, people have to raise their houses for new construction up to a certain point. They have federal money to build various kinds of embankments and various things to protect from flooding around the river there, around downtown Manhattan and various other areas. The best thing I've seen so far would be a kind of an embankment that has the ability to use the top of it as a pathway for bicycles and hiking, whatever, with cut-throughs so that you get into the water, enjoy it. They're talking about the possibility of levees in the harbor and various things. All these things have to be looked at. And then, of course, there's the final thing is that maybe some of these houses should never have been built on the waterfront to begin with. And you're getting into very dangerous political rails when you're talking about stuff like that. Nobody wants to be removed from the homes. Talk to me. Somebody.
Are there any initiatives for aquatic life in the harbor area?
The aquatics basically are dependent upon the oyster project and various things of that nature. The New York Aquarium down in Coney Island develops the aquatic life. But in terms of the way you're saying it, I'm not sure what you mean. We're not replenishing it.
Yeah.
The only way in which you're going to really be able to make use of that aquatic life is if the rivers and the streams get dredged to a suitable point. At least that's my feeling. I don't know what everybody else feeling about that is. I'll go back one little step, and that is our rivers and our waterfronts have very active not-for-profit groups that have taken the responsibility of working in their particular areas and cleaning up their areas, making their areas accessible to the people who use, such as Bronx River Alliance, which works a very, very strong program up in the Bronx River, close into the upper part of the New York streams. And there are a lot of different groups like that, but not just in New York City, but on the various Hudson River waterfronts.
What are some maybe like new projects that are upcoming that you're excited about, or other like developments? And or do you know anything about like the Brooklyn Navy Yard? What I think they just built like a new park there, and I feel like they're trying to make that more accessible to people. Do you know anything about that?
What the city is doing is trying to take all of the old industrial areas that are gigantic and develop into industrial uses that are reasonably non-polluting. Reasonably non-polluting. Everything pollutes a little bit, but reasonably. In addition to which, they'll take those locations that are adjacent to the waterfront, such as Bushwick Inlet maybe, or over at the BAT, the Brooklyn Army Terminal, and the Naval Yard, and trying to make those also accessible for the use of people in terms of developing the docks and the waters and the areas around us. And it's a slow process, but it's a good process in the sense that you get an economic return which can help pay for the other part of it, which is for the use of education and recreation and environmental discoveries.
What is the biggest like external pushback that the Alliance is feeling, or is everything like smooth sailing? You're not getting.
Oh, nothing is smooth. The pushback comes everywhere. It will come from local neighborhood groups. I have been out to talk to groups in New Jersey along the river, small little towns along the river. And I keep telling them that they need a greenway, a walkway up and down their area where boats can come in and people can make use of that. You got this people. And what do you hear from these guys? We don't want strangers walking through our backyard. We don't want the influx maybe of cars parking in our street who are going to make use of these launching points. Everything has a pushback. I was at a meeting yesterday about the East River Greenway, running from 35th Street north up to 120th or so. And there's an area up there that they want to improve it and make it better for people to use. And it's a pathway, basically. And I personally would like to see a greenway, which is an area that's usable for hiking, for walking, or biking, or whatever, running from here to Greenland. That's my along all the shores. But these guys are saying, listen, we're going to improve that. We're going to have 1 million bikes running past our front windows over here. We can't have that. So everybody's got an internal requirement. Everybody is interested in what's happening in their own backyard. And that's all part of the pushback. So I could say to you, oh yeah, we get a lot of pushback from the city because they don't want to spend money. But the truth of the matter is you get pushback from everybody. And you got to work with people. You got to work with the city. You got to accommodate yourself with the interests of local community groups. So you don't get 100% of what you're looking for, but you get a little bit of here and a little bit of there, and sooner or later, people realize how good it is, and then you can get some more. The one thing I don't want to see, regardless, I don't want to see more parking garages on our waterfront areas.
Yeah.
There's a problem also with development on our waterfront, in the sense that developers are not evil people. They're in the business of making money. You got to understand that that's what they're doing. That's in their DNA. Now that the water has gotten cleaner, that's another pushback, by the way. I'll tell you about that in a second. Now that the water has gotten cleaner, all of a sudden land is worth a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You buy land for X dollars and sell it for 1 million times X dollars. So part of the city's job has got to be, with our input, whatever, is to make sure that we maintain those areas open to the public on a regular, easily available basis, and that not everything is taken up by simply the development of high rises just because you can afford to live there. Doesn't necessarily mean you should. In terms of the pushback, for example, the Gowanus is getting cleaner. it's a good thing, right? People maybe in the neighborhood were getting sick. Nobody really has good stats on that, but you got to figure the water was pretty dirty. The air was probably low 30s, so people were getting sick. And nobody likes to live next to a polluted stream, and the grass is very polluted. So the Gowanus is now in the process of becoming clean. And because it was polluted, that area was very cheap to buy homes in, very cheap. And now you have people who are living in cheap homes who are afraid they're going to get priced out of their homes because of gentrification as the water gets clean. So you gotta, quite a few people will say, leave it where it is. We don't care. We got to live here, and what you're going to do is increase the costs of our living.
So I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, really? We ran out. That was a good hour.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned, I guess, the Dutch and Amsterdam briefly as some people think it potentially is a model for New York, but I guess I'm just curious, are there any other cities that you know of in the US or internationally that are doing really interesting?
That's not my field, but I know there are. I think they're doing a lot of good work over in Stockholm. I think they're doing a lot of good work. I forget the port in Germany and in Sweden, I believe. It's Stockholm and Sweden. I think there are, and I really just don't know.
So before we wrap up, we just wanted to show everyone the Waterfront Alliance website.
Oh, yes. And let me also say to you that before we start here, unfortunately, my sign-up sheet didn't print out this morning because of technological difficulties, plus the fact I'm stupid. So if anybody would like to register, get into our database to receive our Water Wire, which is our bi-weekly newsletter, which gives you details of what's going on in a waterfront and etc. There's where you can sign up for either online, or you can just put in your name and your email with me over here. It's easy to sign up online. What we do is waterfront events. And if you go into that and scroll down, these are events that people have submitted to me that we post up. So that if you're doing nothing in the course of a weekend or whatever, go through this thing and take a look. You'd be surprised. Some things are expensive, some things are reasonable, and some things are very free. There's all kinds of good stuff that's happening around that we try to do. We invite organizations when they are doing their waterfront events to register with us, and we invite particularly our partners to register their events. So if you know somebody who would like to become a waterfront partner because they subscribe to our basic mission and like what we're doing, please have them contact me. Or you can go online and you can register that way as well. What was the other part?
Could you tell everyone a little bit about
the Hokulea? Yeah. You probably know more than I do. But okay. This canoe came, where did it come
from? Hawaii. Right?
Hawaii, right? That's what I think. Anyway, these guys paddled across from Hawaii, from Polynesia. What they're doing is trying to promote the use of the water in a Hawaiian kind of a sense, which is like African kumbaya from Hawaii, I guess. And they're going to be having all kinds of things going on in the around the water and in the harbors for the course of the next week or so. So that's a event right there, which is today, June 8th. Which is now over since it stopped.
But there are other events.
But there are
during the week.
Tomorrow I'm going to be over there, and you can come out, say hello, and see where they are. Then come down a little bit more. Beyond that, and here are various paddles and things like that. This is a fun thing which they ask for a donation of $10 maybe, but it's over toward the Seaport Museum. And they're going to be doing nothing but songs and music that's from the sea, and they're a great orchestra. This Liberty Challenge, come back up. Okay, so that's an outrigger group, and the Hokulea will be over there as well, and I'll be over there also tabling during that day, and we'll have maybe 3,000-4,000 people, and it's a series of outrigger races. And they're kind of fun. When you're over there, and that's on Pier 26, if you come south of Pier 26 to Pier 25, you'll see the Lilac, which is an historic ship where they do all kinds of great things on board, also for free. Does everybody know how to find the pier over on the west side? Take 40 and subtract from the street.
Oh.
96 is Pier 46. Doesn't work anywhere else. It works for the west side of Long Island. And that's our water wire, and if you sign up, this is some of the stuff you're going to get. This is just an abbreviated kind of a version of what really comes in green.
Does anyone have any last minute questions?
Last minute stuff. All right, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking with you guys. And I do hope that you check out our website and become more connected with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.